And testified before Congress on religious freedom in Tibet and China. Dr. Dorjee has been recognized and received multiple awards from Tibetan institutions for his contributions to preserving and disseminating Tibetan Buddhism, culture, and language. He has had the honor of translating for His Holiness the Dalai Lama and many other prominent Buddhist teachers, lamas, for over decades. He is also a published co-author and has received multiple awards for teaching, research, and community service. Please give a round of applause to Dr. Tenzing.
Thank you.
To his right, we have Tenzing Nuba. Tenzing Nuba is a seasoned educator in US and a translator of Tibetan Buddhism. After fleeing Tibet in 1961 due to the Chinese invasion, he pursued higher education in India with the aid of scholarship from Swiss aid to Tibetans. He earned a master's degree in English and a Bachelor of Education from Punjab University in India, dedicating over a decade to teaching English in Indian high schools. His work as a translator transformed him into a culture ambassador, taking him to countries like Brazil, Switzerland, Canada, and the United States. In 1992, he immigrated to the United States, where he earned a California teaching credential at UC Irvine. His career culminated in nearly 2 decades of teaching English in public schools and community colleges, leaving a lasting impact on countless students before a well-deserved retirement. Thanks, guys. And then we have Namye Ondu, who worked for the Central Tibetan Administrator for 10 years and then immigrated to the United States. He is our current president of the Tibetan Association of Southern California, and he works as a journeyman plumber. Thank you very much. So with that said, I'm sure there's questions from the audience, but I'm going to start with my first question, which is, if each one of you guys please give your, experience or what you thought of the film tonight. This is the please start.
Good evening, everyone. Just as it was said in the introduction, I have the honor and privilege to translate for His Holiness the Dalai Lama many times in India, here in the United States of America. And so even though, we the translator did our job best as we could to translate His Holiness, but I always felt that when His Holiness spoke in his English, even if it's very simple, it's very magical and it really goes straight into your heart. And that's something even as I think professional translator probably couldn't replicate, right? That's my experience, and everybody here today, we together experience His Holiness' words, right, in his own words. So I think His Holiness really spoke very simply, but things he said, contain pragmatic wisdoms, if you will. He always said that when he traveled around the world, really he spoke about universal themes, right? And he really did not really teach Buddhism in the public arena, but he really wanted to speak about what he calls, my religion is simple, my religion is kindness. And so that's very much rooted in the sense of compassion, karuna, Tibetans call nyingje. Okay? So I will yield to my colleagues here, and there's a lot of things to say, so I'll start off with that much.
I'd like to share it like this. We all watched the same movie at the same time in the same auditorium. And we always assume that my experience of watching that movie has to be the same with others. And that's not the reality. It's always different. And sometimes it's really amazing to find the difference. If you ask your neighbor right after the movie how you felt, what did you get to take away from it, you'll be amazed what different answers you'll find. We believe that Buddha gave 84,000 heaps of teachings because there are 84,000 negative emotions. So to address each one of them, he gave one piece of teaching. His Holiness in this movie, just like Dr. Tenzing said, in his own simple way, but with his wisdom, he summarized all those 84,000 heaps of teaching. If you sum that up, Basically, he was saying, you are your own master. There can be no other master. Through calming yourself alone, you can find the master hard to find. In the West, we don't have vocabulary to translate Tibetan Buddhist concepts. For example, the word compassion. In the West, compassion is an emotion. In Tibetan, compassion is a state of mind. Emotions are not different from your mind. In Tibetan Buddhist psychology, there's one primary mind surrounded by 51 mental factors. Those are your emotions. So in the movie, you heard His Holiness repeatedly say, training your mind, training your mind. In the same way, there's another word which is very misleading, and that is compassion. Compassion is also an emotion, which means it is also a mind. So training your mind, His Holiness' favorite phrase, we must have a map of emotions if we have to train our mind. Such simple words, like the Shakespeare. Shakespeare's words are very simple. For example, the insane root that takes your reason prisoner. If you ask the meaning of each one of those words, even an 8th grader or a 6th grader can understand. But put those words together in that simple sentence, if you want to rephrase it, very difficult. Why? Just like His Holiness, Shakespeare too addresses the universal themes that transcend time and culture. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Me, comparing to these two guys over here, I'm nothing, because these two guys are the experts. I'm, as a president over here, I'm here to accommodate. I support you guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? If there are any questions from the audience, if not, I'll go to my next question. Any other questions out there? Okay, so my next question is, how can everyday people, especially the younger generation, apply the Dalai Lama's message of mindfulness and compassion in today's world?
I think the way His Holiness spoke is something that we can all relate to, right? I don't think he specifically talked about compassion as described in the Buddhist teaching. There are many levels of compassion. He simply said that compassion is concern for others' well-being, and that any of us can understand. And so in every one of our lives, depending on our ability, if we can show a little bit of that concern for the people we are living together under the same roof, in the same neighborhood, or we meet at our workplace situation, I think in a sense we are putting that compassion in action, isn't it? That we don't want somebody to feel left out, as if that person does not belong to our society, isn't it? I think one of the issues we see in our country is the sense of loneliness, which as in for the Tibetan mind, it is really hard to fathom that. How can somebody feel really lonely in some sense? Maybe this is something to do with the way we have been socialized and brought up in our culture. Even His Holiness said, right? He described that while I'm a Buddhist monk, I don't have a wife, I don't have a kids, it looks like I'm a lonely person here. but he feels that the whole world are his brothers and sisters. So he feels so connected to every one of us. And so that matters, isn't it? And of course, if we can show compassion for one person first, the one who really matters a lot in our life, then we can slowly can extend the scope of that compassion to include more and more people. So finally, if we could include all beings, so we call that is, great compassion or Mahakaruna in Sanskrit, right? So I think, we can all practice a little bit of that, show concern for others.
Yeah, picking on that, I'll add something to that. And earlier I said the word compassion is very misleading. For example, if you look at the Bible describes 6 types of compassion. Wonderful concepts, wonderful ideas. But I want to share with you something very personal. 2012, a month ago, in 2012, I bought a new car. And I drove it to my school where I work as a teacher. In those days, I used to smoke. So before entering into the school campus, I used to stop by our marketplace in the parking lot to have a last puff. On that particular day, a pickup truck hit my car at the rear. It was a brand new car. The person who drove that pickup truck in the parking lot, so it's not a huge crash, but a huge dent on my car. Following the American system, I went forward to exchange documents. He had none. He was probably in late 50s. He was literally shaking in his pants. Had no driver's license. Forget about the insurance. So I looked at my car. Well, not very bad. So I told him, it's okay. You go on your ways, I'll go in my ways. While I was saying that, he was on the phone, probably with his wife, and he was explaining to that wife, almost literally crying, that this young man, I was at that time young, that he forgave me and he let me go. He was so happy. For the first time in my life, I had come myself face to face what is called happiness. At home, when I told about it to my son, the first word that came out of his mouth was Ningje. Tibetan word Ningje means pity. This pity is called sympathy, sympathetic pity, aspect of compassion. So this now brings us to the word compassion, what it is really. Compassion is not an emotion, it's a state of mind, but it's an active mind. In other words, it's a mind in action. How can I explain that? If you see a situation which is very bad, very sad, and if you can't live without doing something about it, if there is something that is urging you to do something about it, to do something to solve that problem, otherwise you're not going to have peace of mind. That is compassion. Sanskrit word karuna, Hindi taras. You see the situation, you feel it, but you can not do something about it. That is compassion.
Thank you, Tenzing. Actually, Tenzing Dorjee and Tenzing Nuba, can you guys explain for our audience, His Holiness talked about debate in Tibetan Buddhism and how, we use that as dialogue instead of dealing with differences and not getting angry. And I know there was a lot of motion with the hand, the gestures. Could you explain how that works in a monastic setting as far as debates?
We heard His Holiness use the word, we have to use the analytical mind. So debate is a very formalized way of analyzing truth and realities. And as you saw, monks and nuns and lay scholars, somebody standing up and clapping their hands, and then somebody is sitting there try to answer it. So it's a question and answer form. And the closest I can think of is like we use a syllogistic reasoning, a little bit like Aristotelian syllogism there, right? So through reasoning, because everything based on the reason, you have to accept or disagree. And so Tibetan Buddhism, it came from the Nalanda, tradition of India, ancient. And so we very much really focus on analyzing things, just like His Holiness was saying, there are a lot of things common between science and Tibetan Buddhism. Yes, faith has some role, but we would prefer not to have blind faith because it doesn't take us anywhere. The faith should be based upon reasoning and understanding. So that has to come through dialogue, right? So debating is more like dialoguing with each other, but in a very formalized way. And so it really clears your mind. It sharpens your mind, right? You're able to, delve into the realities as deep as possible. So with that kind of a practice, when you are alone, you can also use your analytical mind and you can calm down, right? If somebody here makes me angry, instead of being reactive, I can just start to use my analytical mind and meditation, say, what's happening inside me? Why am I really starting to get upset and angry, isn't it? Usually we try to blame the person who made me angry, but as Susan said, we have to differentiate between actor and action, isn't it? And so the person who makes me angry is really, from Buddhist point of view, really not the real cause of my anger. Isn't that person himself or herself could be under some stress or under some negative emotions, right? And if that person's mind cools down, he or she might say, no, I'm so sorry, Tenzin, I didn't mean to say that, okay? Right? I'm not that kind. And I know that. So this is how we analyze it, that, that is not the person. Even Gandhi said, right? Don't hate this, the sinner, but the sin kind of thing, right? So I think analytical mind in debate is a very useful way of probing the truth. And we use this really for our practice and to get enlightened, right? But the way His Holiness talks about is how to deal with negative emotions. And this is a very powerful one. I have been studying Buddhism for ages now. I'm not much of a practitioner, but I do use that mind. It does really make a difference. That much I can say.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, what are we talking about?
Debate.
Okay, okay. I heard you say syllogism. Yes, that's the ancient Aristotelian way of debating, or in those times, the term they used was not debate, but conference was a very popularly used term. Tibetan system of debate, or let me put this way. Tibetan words are, like I said, difficult to translate into English. Tibetan, the monastic debating system is very much based on logic, and the logic has to be always simple. Otherwise, it's not logic. If anything is not easily understandable, it's not logical. So, giving you that premise, now Tibetan monastic debating system is like this. If 2 plus 2 is 4, then why can't 4 be equal to 2 plus 2? Sounds very silly. But then that line of thinking, that line of statement really makes you think. So if someone else is with me, like for example, Dr. Dorjee is well-versed, well-trained in that monastic debating system. I was earlier wondering why he didn't include in his biography his studies in Buddhism in a formal way, not like me. So if you are debating with a Tibetan, it is as simple as that. If someone tells you 2 plus 2 is 4, you do not want to say, okay, absurd, that's true, of course, I agree. You don't say that. You say, in that case, if that is true, then 4 must be equal to 2 plus 2. You just make the other person think, even though that's the fact. Well, one might say, so that's too simple. You both agreed. And so what? What's the next? The next is 6 times 2 is also 12. It's a fact. But 12 is not equal to 6. 6 is not equal to 2. 2 plus 6 is not equal to 12. You go on. You go on analyzing that simple fact. 6 times 2 is 12. You tear it down, you unload it, you tear it down to the basics. That's Tibetan debate. That's the Tibetan debate system.
Thank you very much. All right, so being the only woman up here, I have to mention, oh, we have a question? Okay, go ahead.
If I understood correctly, he said that female leaders are more compassionate.
One sec, please.
Female Dalai Lama could be in the future. Do you believe that is so?
I'm going to answer that first. The question is, His Holiness said that, female leaders are more compassionate and kind. And do you feel that, is it possible to have a Dalai Lama that's a female? First of all, the reason I just brought up the fact that I'm a woman up here, His Holiness said that his first teacher of compassion was his mom, right, his mother. Even until she passed away, the amount of admiration he had for her and the love that he had for her, and just the fact that she was such a loving, kind, giving, not only to her own children, but to all the children in the Tibetan diaspora. His Holiness, wherever he was, there was lots of children from refugees and children that were at a Tibetan children's village. These are all children with no parents that come to get educated over there. She had so much kindness. So, I think there is a certain, I'm sorry, no offense to any of the men in the room, and I'm sure that all the men agree, right, that women are kinder and gentler, and it is possible that there might be the next female Dalai Lama could be a female. He's not ruling it out. In fact, recently, for the longest time, he didn't say whether there was going to be another Dalai Lama, because he said it's up to the Tibetan people, it's up to humanity whether a next Dalai Lama is going to come or not. But when he turned 90 and just a couple maybe weeks or months ago, he did say that there was going to be a next Dalai Lama, the 15th Dalai Lama. But he's also going to live a very long life, right? So can be very helpful, but it's possible. But I'll pass it over to our panel for their input.
Thank you for your question. We Tibetans believe that His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this is the 14th, not the first, are the human manifestations of Buddha compassion. Buddha is a Sanskrit word which means enlightened being. So the enlightened state has no gender. It can manifest not only females, sometimes even in the Buddhist course, we said if need be, they can manifest in the form of bridges and inanimate objects if there are uses for those things. So theoretically speaking, and in terms of my belief system, not just a theory, I'm not speaking here as just a professor at the moment, as a practicing Buddhist, that it is possible for His Holiness, under the right circumstances, if he sees that coming in the form of female is going to be of utmost benefit, why not? There are no barriers. He is in charge. He can decide. Nobody can stop him from doing that. So all the 14 Dalai Lamas, the institutional Dalai Lama historically have been males, but that doesn't mean that enlightened being called the Dalai Lama, the Buddha of compassion, can manifest it in any gender. Yeah, and I believe that. It's not just I'm talking here, but my belief. Yes.
What was her exact question?
So her exact question is it possible that the next Dalai Lama could be a female?
Female.
Right?
Oh.
Not, can, not that.
He also said that
In general, not
female
that. Yeah.
Dalai Lama could be very useful.
He also said that female Dalai Lama could be very useful.
Mhm.
So,
What are your feelings
so
of
what's the
the
question?
possibility of the next Dalai Lama being a
Primeiro.
So, what's the question?
That's the question, right?
Yeah, he said that, and that is that His Holiness, like I said right in the beginning, not only did he study those 84,000 heaps of Buddha's teachings, but he practiced them. As a result, he gained what is called wisdom. Now, again, that's a most confusing word in English. What is wisdom? The movie is called The Wisdom of Happiness. What is wisdom? The best translation that I can come up with in English for the Tibetan Shira Oishi is clean, clear understanding. Shiva Rabdu Tarasumba, Tibetan definition. Clean, clear understanding of any phenomenon. That's wisdom. So His Holiness, when he makes that statement, if necessary, in this movie he said, because of the situation of the 19th century, 20th century, and now in 21st century, he thinks from his wisdom. It may be more beneficial if the Dalai Lama, the next Dalai Lama, is a female.
Thank you, Lisa. We have a question up there. Can you, Mike?
Hi, I'm Natalie, and I'm working on a film, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the difference between empathy and compassion. And part two is there a difference in those two words in the East and in the West?
Mhm.
Question and what?
Empathy and compassion.
Oh,
You want to go?
please.
I think in English, I often find many interchangeably used empathy and compassion. In Sanskrit, there is a clear term for compassion, which is karuna, and the Tibetan word is nyingje. Now, in English, we say compassion. But empathy, for me, is something closely related to compassion, but it is not the same as compassion. There are a lot of research studies on emotional intelligence, right? You can define it in many ways, but an essential component of emotional intelligence, EQ, is empathy. That means, are we able to sense the difficulty with other person? Are you able to feel something, right? You are not robotic, you are feeling person, isn't it? And then more than that, are you able to now sort of put your feet in their shoes and try to really feel it, right? That's more like that. But I think those two are very intimately related, but I wouldn't say they are one and the same thing. But I'll defer to my respected colleague here. What do you think?
I think a lot of things. Now here, I'll try to put it in a nutshell. In Buddhist world, our ultimate goal is to become a Buddha, to be enlightened. So how can you do that? There has to be a cause to achieve enlightenment. And the cause is the mind, the mind of enlightenment or altruism. If that is the case, there has to be a cause to gain that again. In other words, the mind of enlightenment. And the cause of which is compassion. And the compassion I already defined earlier. So then, if you want to gain compassion, or if you want to be a compassionate person, there has to be a cause. And the cause for compassion, among many other things, empathy is one.
Thank you, Tenzing. Okay, we'll take the last question and then I think we should call it a night because it's getting.
Thank you for having us. This is really cool. When the movie was happening, it felt really consistent, and then he said something that didn't make, like, I didn't really follow very well. And he said that when he's meditating, most people meditate by clearing their mind, but he thinks, and then he said the question he asks himself is something like, who am I? And then he said, I think he says an unanswerable question. And I'm curious why, of all the things you could think about, why he said that.
Yeah.
And whether that's his, is that the key question, or is that just one of the questions? Thank you.
That's a very good question. I'm going to defer to Tenzing.
Thank you very much. So in Buddhism, as my friend said, from practice point of view, our goal is to be an enlightened person. And for that, we must have compassion. That's an essential part of your path to get there. But compassion alone is not going to get there. So you need other things, and one of which, is what we call, realizing, understanding, realizing. We use different words in English: emptiness, selflessness. In Sanskrit, we use the word shunyata. In Pali, we use the word sunnata. In Tibetan, we call tongpanyi tangme. So I think His Holiness was kind of getting that, it is very important for us, because, for example, somebody like me, I have this self-cherishing attitude, self-centeredness, right? The whole world revolves around me. I'm the center of the universe. With me. And then I grasp at, looks like there is a very fixed entity called Tenzing Dorjee, or somebody says Dr. Dorjee. There's something in me that's Dr. Dorjee. With me. But if you really use the analysis and the Buddhist analytical meditation and the practices, there is nothing to be found in my body and mind that's called Dr. Dorjee. With me? Because we are talking about the ontological status. Now I'm speaking like a professor here, right? Ontological reality. And who am I? What is Tenzing Dorjee, right? So it's just a label, right? Somebody called me Tenzing Dorjee. They are calling me Dr. Dorjee, professor, whatever. It's just a label. There's nothing in me that is, because Buddhism doesn't believe in a permanent soul. Yeah, Buddhism believes in selflessness, anatma, something, right? So I think His Holiness is saying that there's nothing to be attached and grasped that look like I'm the most important of all beings, isn't it? It's just a fabrication thought. So through meditation, if you take off that facade and fabrication, what you realize is you are just grasping at something that doesn't exist at all, very egoistic. So that's my understanding of that. Now,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
question really it's a wonderful question. Uh, the first part of the question is the meditation part of it. His Holiness saying that some believe that meditation means to empty your head, think nothing. In other words, be a vegetable. His Holiness saying that's really not meditation. Meditation is mentally very active. You may appear to be sitting still. You may appear to be in tranquility. You may appear to be really doing nothing. But actually, in your inner world, you're very active. In fact, in that world, nothing can obstruct your imagination, your perception, your conceptualization, your thinking. Nothing can obstruct it. In fact, when you stay in that analytical state of meditation, which is trying to figure out why 2 + 2 is 4. Now, in this case, we are not saying 2 + 2 is 4 and that's a fact. No. In my analytical meditation, I'm saying why 2 + 2 is 4, because it's ridiculous. Think about it. Somebody said 2 + 2 is 4, and we all accept it. But in reality, it's just ridiculous. There is no such thing as 2 or 4. These are all numbers that we came up with. That part of the concept of the analytical meditation leads you to the second part of your question. And that is, His Holiness is on the TV, they call us for, again, question and answer session. And this same question came actually in a different way, you know. And Dr. Tenzing, as all the wise people do, he just left it to me. He said, you answer that question. And I said the same thing at that time. I said, you know, because at that time the audience was different from today. And therefore, at that time I said, today when you go home, or even on the way home, think about something. Think about even a thought. Think about a concept. Think about any concrete object that comes into being or that manifests by not depending on something else. And if you find something, let me know.
Thank you. All right, so this is going to be the last question. It'll probably be the closing statement for each one of us, right? Was there a moment in the film that personally moved you or inspired you?
Oh, that's wonderful.
well, it's very hard to pick and choose anything, right, for me. But I think I want to say a few things that's very related to this movie we just saw, inspiring. That His Holiness said that we need to use positive emotions in order to counteract negative emotions. His Holiness has met with scientists for over 3 decades. I think very recently there were scientists meeting with His Holiness in Dharamsala, India. And so, for example, in the documentary we saw neuroscientist Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin. He looked very young. His son was young. Now they both are a little more, how should I say, aged. So now there are a lot of really young scientists who use scientific methods to be able to study the things that scientists would normally not study, right? Compassion, mindfulness, kindness. So His Holiness thought that in Buddhism, we have so much knowledge and information, wisdom about the mind, the science of the mind and emotions. So His Holiness commissioned top scholars of Tibetan monastic universities together and pull out all those resources from 84,000 discourses of Buddha, my friend was mentioning before, and they published several volumes. And these are like gold mine. And then His Holiness also told Professor Emeritus Paul Ekman up north and his daughter, Professor Eva, to map out emotions based upon Buddhist, right, knowledge. And I think they were trying to work on a project called Atlas of Emotions, you know. So that's very important. I think one of the things that's mentioned there is about the need for, how should I say, look into our education system. And we need to bring some changes there. We need to educate not only the brain part, which we have been doing very well, modern education, but we have somehow not paid attention to the warm-heartedness part, right? And this is what His Holiness concerned. He thought the world should be made better, and we can do that together. And under His Holiness vision and leadership, that Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Tibetan monastic, scholars or contemplative scholars, they worked for many years. And so they have, I only saw a draft of that some years ago. Now it must be finalized, the whole education curriculum for K-12. So basically try to, teach from a very young age. We all have the seed of compassion, right? We need to activate it and, to teach more about loving kindness from a young age so that when these new generations comes up, they become much more compassionate, right? And so there will be a century of dialogue and peace, right? That we're not going to start a war right away because now we have this warm-heartedness, education, and growth in that. So that's very important. When His Holiness escaped to Tibet, the first thing he did was did not really establish a monastery. With the help of late Prime Minister Pandit Nehru of India, they established schools. Education is very important. So if you really want to change the world, we all know the leveling field is education. And education, really, we have to have some kind of paradigm shift, if you could dare to say that, right? And that's what's happening. And that has been experimented in many schools in India, and they're producing some positive results. They are experimented in different parts of the world, and that's very inspiring. I think something, a tribute to His Holiness the Dalai Lama as we celebrate this year of compassion, and he's now 90 years old. So with that closure, I yield to my friend here.
Yeah, my takeaway from the film really is no different from the past 70 plus years that I grew up with His Holiness, receiving his advice, receiving his talks, teachings, and audiences, and so forth. And which is always, like I said earlier, always inspiring. But today I had a different kind of experience. And that is, usually when you listen to His Holiness give a talk or give teachings, you take it in, you try to process it, you try to absorb it. That at least used to be my process. But today, the background sound effect disturbed me a lot.
Thank you, Vincent. All right, so anyway, we are gonna offer traditional Tibetan kathas. Nangila is gonna offer to Tenzing Dorjee and Tenzing Nuba. We wanna thank you for your wisdom and And thank you everyone for being here tonight. Let's take wisdom of happiness into the world out there and bring more peace and joy to everyone's life.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Have a
Good night.
pleasant
Good
evening.
night,
Yeah.
Stacy.
Sa Tenzing ya chocho Amari Nanchoramayo Tusanvelamayo Etsavelama Kirayi Jikutseten Katinche tujichi Simlangi tensaki Kimantu senkichi lagi Kimantu lagayi Katinche tujichi Senangkirim bochi Kika jinam yanji